Taking my computer forever to get started. Hello. How are you?
We were going to nominate you to be chair.
Would you like me to? Yes.
Well, we have a secretary, so
I'd be happy to, if you want me to. Sit here.
It's up to you, honestly.
That's fine.
You guys can roll however you want to roll.
If we would like to,
As long as you give me some grace. I would be happy to.
so I would call the meeting to order and then we would have a motion to nominate somebody to chair for the evening. Is that how that would work? Okay.
Our vice chair.
But you call
All
the
right.
meeting to order.
Now my Wi-Fi is working. Okay, great.
All right, and then
Right on time.
I will call the meeting to order.
No,
Or secretary.
The secretary calls the meeting to order.
All righty.
There's the gavel if you'd like it.
Wow. All right. Okay. All right. Well, it is now 6:30, July 24th at the Planning Commission meeting, Meridian Township. Secretary Snyder calling the meeting to order. And now,
You can call the roll.
okay, so we'll begin with roll call. I don't have everybody's
here.
names. All right. Oh, right, it would be right there too. Huh?
Page 3.
Thank you.
All right, just step ahead of me.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, Chair Bloomer is absent, Vice Chair Tresice also absent, Commissioner Brooks,
present.
Commissioner McCurtis,
Present.
Commissioner Scales,
Present.
Commissioner McConnell is absent, Commissioner Richards is absent, Commissioner Shrewsbury,
Present.
and I, Secretary Snyder, am present. Is there a motion to nominate someone to serve in the capacity as temporary chair for the evening? Or can I give that motion? Yes,
I'll nominate Commissioner Shrewsbury to
Great.
serve as temporary chair for the purposes of carrying out the business for tonight's meeting.
Would anybody,
I'll second it.
thank you, second that motion. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. And that passes. So Commissioner Shrewsbury is going to serve as temporary chair this evening. Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you, thank you. I think that brings us down to item 3 on the agenda, public remarks. I see no public in the room, so I think we can go to number 4, approval of the agenda for the July 24th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting. Is there a motion to approve? So moved.
I move to approve the minutes of the,
The agenda
oh, I'm
first.
sorry, of tonight's agenda.
Second.
Second.
Okay, the move by Commissioner Scales, seconded by Commissioner Snyder, that our agenda, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you. Next is item 5, approval of the minutes from the June 26th, 2023 meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I move to approve the minutes of the June 26th meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Support.
Okay, moved by Commissioner McCurtis and supported by Commissioner Scales to approve the minutes of the June 26, 2023 meeting. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Scales?
Yes. Can I have a copy of the minutes? Because it's not coming up on my computer here.
Yes.
There is a small typographical error I'd like to correct.
Thank goodness for the training we
Give me
just had.
just 1 second. I have to admit, I didn't anticipate that question.
I have them on my computer if you'd like, on my iPad, if you'd like to look
Can't
at
get my computer
them.
to work properly,
Okay.
but I need to be able to look at them to find it.
Thankfully, they're short. Would you like to look at mine and,
Okay.
oh, they're up there too. You can put your screen on and look
Yeah,
at
but
them
I
there.
can't scroll those.
Oh, correct.
You have to scroll for us.
I have the scrolling capabilities.
You are in
I'm putting a
control.
mark on there.
Oh, yes, sorry, that's a,
Technology, what a wonder.
It's glorious.
Anyway, there is a typographical error that just needs to be adjusted. It's in a comment that I made, and I have to find it because I had it marked on my computer and I can't get my computer to open up.
Was it related to the SUP question?
Let's see. Commissioner
expiration?
was asked about the potential expiration. No, that is not it.
oh, it's under number 5, approval of minutes,
Okay.
perhaps.
Scales moved to approve the minutes. No, that's not it. No, it's a comment and the language is just not clear.
Okay, we'll track it down.
Okay,
And honestly, if the board simply wants to make it subject to Commissioner Scales sending that comment to staff, we're happy to take care of it.
thank you. I don't think it's worth holding up the whole meeting to search for.
Thank you. So everybody okay with approving the minutes with the possible correction as noted? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Thank you. Next on the agenda is communications. Item 6, any communications?
We have none this evening.
Thank you. Public hearings, we have none. Unfinished business, it appears that we have none. This is easy. So we're on item 9, other business. And turn it over to you, Director Schmidt.
Thank you, Chairperson. We have 2 items this evening that we are introducing to you to give you a chance to start looking these over. We knew we were going to have a short house this evening, so we didn't want to put anything that needed immediate action. So we're planning ahead here a little bit. So this is part 1. This is a series of ordinance changes that are coming about as a result of the Redevelopment Ready Communities Program. So Meridian Township was one of the first and one of the only townships that's part of that program. We're up for recertification under the sort of 2.0 version of this plan. And the 2.0 version of the program has some changed standards. And in reviewing them with our representative at the MBDC and in reviewing things from a staff perspective, there's a number of changes to the ordinance that range from, minor to major. And so we've brought these forward to the township board. The township board, after discussion, directed us to continue and referred it to the planning commission for more formal discussion, eventually a public hearing and a recommendation back. So I'm just going to briefly go over these because let me first talk about timing on this. This is not a mission critical thing right now. What we want to do is get it in front of the planning commission, so you'd have plenty of time to review it and think about it and come up with whatever questions you have. We'll bring it back for a public hearing at the end of August, August 28th, and then we'll take the month of September to review it, go through it, answer any questions, and then hopefully by the end of September, make a recommendation back to the board. So no rush. But generally, this ordinance, it covers functionally three things, really. There's a housing component, there is a process component, and there is an item that relates to the corridor improvement authority, actually. So one, we're recommending eliminating the minimum house and unit size. It doesn't come up often, but every once in a while we get somebody that wants to build a smaller house, and it's not possible under our ordinance. And I'm not even talking tiny house, I'm talking just smaller. We also have a number of lots up around sort of the Lake Lansing, Marsh Road intersection. They're very small, that building a house to meet the size standards of our ordinance is going to have them run afoul of other standards in the ordinance. Additionally, there's just a long history with that kind of a standard being pretty anti-affordability. So we're recommending that we remove it. It's not going to come up very often, but it comes up sometimes. Secondly, we are recommending that multifamily uses be allowed by right in a multifamily district. If you're going to zone something for a use, allow it to be used. It seems relatively straightforward to us. The third one is the corridor improvement authority piece. If you have a corridor improvement authority, one of the things per statute that is required is that you allow second floor residential in that district. We currently don't, but we haven't really used the CIA much. So now that we're ramping up the CIA, we're recommending this change be made to the ordinance. You can still do other stories of it, but then you're going to come in under the MUPUD ordinance and it's going to be a lot more complicated. This is simply talking about someone redeveloping a 2-story building along Grand River Avenue somewhere. They would be able to do a second floor apartment if they wanted to. Pretty common in downtowns. I'm going to skip the number 4 and come back to that. The last one is we're recommending removing the public hearing requirement for site plans. I can count on one hand in my 2.5 years the number of people that have come to that. And if you take out Comcast salesmen, I need one finger, basically. We think we can do a much better job of getting this information out to the public just by using our website. Because nobody comes to these, because by the time it gets to site plan, it's basically already been approved and been through the public hearing process. And so having another public hearing at the end just doesn't make sense. Lastly, the accessory dwelling units. So this is something that another iteration of the Planning Commission brought up several years ago, and it didn't really go anywhere for some reason. But this has become, frankly, this is like the new hot thing in planning that everybody's starting to glom onto. Now, it's been around for decades, and our ordinance actually technically has a very vague reference to it. But this idea that you have a second dwelling unit either above the garage or in a detached accessory structure on your property is something that's pretty common in a lot of places in the world, but it's just not as common in the Midwest specifically. It's becoming more common. People want to, especially after, it seems like COVID has accelerated this. Kids moving home, parents wanting to stay in their houses longer, but having a space for their kids and wanting a separate space. People aging in place and wanting to stay in their house, but needing to have an accessible location to stay in their house because the second floor no longer works. A lot of different scenarios. It's interesting because over the years we've found a lot of these just kind of happen. Garages get converted and eventually somebody puts a bed out there because, they're hanging out there more often and all of a sudden, dad lives in the garage and mom lives in the house, kind of thing. But that's a fairly big change. And what you'll see is if you go through the ordinance, there's a number of items in that section that we have in blue, actually. And those are the sort of those are the items that we really would appreciate any feedback on as you read through this. The stuff that's not in blue are really, kind of, we need to have this to do this. But the blue stuff, like setbacks, height, size, deed restriction, attachment, detachment, stuff like that, like we would love the feedback on it. The intention is, and in other communities where this has been successful, is you essentially make it so that no one knows what's there. It's just another part of the house. It just looks like the house, or it looks like a detached garage. There's no stairway on the exterior. There's things it looks like a garage, and that's the goal. It's a relatively small change. We don't think it's going to have a major impact because it's still kind of expensive to build these. But in the long run, it's just another piece of the housing puzzle. If we're ever going to try and get housing costs under control, this is another piece. Add a little bit of density here and there that's not having a negative impact on the surrounding properties. And so that's really what this ordinance does, which is a lot. But again, just want to introduce it this evening. Happy to answer any questions if you'd like to talk about it. But definitely are going to come back to this in August and September.
Any questions? Commissioner Scales?
Thank you. The first comment I would like to make is I want to thank you for taking my suggestion and putting this in legislative format. It is making it much easier to digest. But this is a mouthful here.
Yes.
And, this is going to take some time to go through.
That's definitely why we wanted to get it to you at least a month in advance of when we really want to talk about it. So as you're reviewing it, if you have questions, just shoot us an email. We're happy to talk about it.
Well, I was looking at the schedule that you and the chair provided, and I'd like to get more of a feeling for what the intent was. I mean, you brushed upon it just now, but can you walk us through that schedule and the expectations that go with each identified marker on that schedule?
Yeah, absolutely. The end goal is to have both, is to have the ordinance in place by December, end of the year, basically. And so giving it to you now, we have to schedule a public hearing at least 15 days in advance. So we'll schedule that for the end of August, the August 28th meeting. That's statutorily required. And then the Planning Commission in September can take both their meetings, one of their meetings, go into October if you have enough conversation about it. But thoroughly vet the ordinance and then make a recommendation back to the board either end of September or early October, depending on where we're at. And then the board will introduce it and take action in October, November, early December if necessary.
And then after the board takes action?
It'll be published in a newspaper of general circulation. It becomes effective 7 days after publication.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments?
Is there any comments that we would make or questions that we would make now that would lead to alterations to this, like in an updated draft, or is that something you would not want to do?
I'm happy to take questions, but I can't imagine one off the top of my head.
Okay, no, I'm not. I just made a lot of comments on it.
Absolutely, send them over to us. We'd love to. We'd love to start chewing on them.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
But I didn't really want to go. I didn't want to hash them all out this evening.
Yeah, what I would suggest is just because we're so early in this process and we're missing part of the planning commission, send them over to us. Let us chew on them a little bit and see what we come up with.
Okay, all right, yeah. The two things that I thought of while you were talking that I want to address though is with the CIA portion, it would be interesting. I don't know if you can answer this or make a note in here, but is there an East Lansing comparison to the multifamily nature on Grand River Avenue? Are we coming up to par with their plannings ordinances?
No, but you're starting to get close. So East Lansing, outside of the downtown core,
Yeah,
the
right.
majority of Grand River in East Lansing is zoned what would be similar to our C2, which is what everything but the mall is here. Usually if it's commercial in Meridian Township, it's C2.
Okay.
So what we would be doing is we would be allowing for one story of residential above that. If I remember correctly, you can go up to 4 stories in East Lansing by right. Now, it might not be by right. It's been a solid 10 years. But I think the key is, though, that they really only see that pretty much directly adjacent to campus. As you get further out,
Yeah.
the commercial becomes more valuable to the East Lansing property owner, and they tend not to go up as much.
Yeah.
That might be changing. You know, they've had a couple proposals over the years for the old Tasty Twist site, that they want to do up a couple stories there. So the economics might be changing somewhat, but like 1 story is the minimum and it meets the CIA, and there's not going to be a huge rush of people coming in here to tear down properties to build a 1 story. I can tell you that much.
No, I don't think so either. I just was curious. I just was wondering if we were becoming in line with them, or if we wanted to differentiate ourselves in some way, or how that was being thought about.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest differentiation, frankly, is they allow a whole lot more height almost across the board than we do. I mean, our tallest buildings are office buildings, interestingly enough. Whereas, you know, you get to, I think, 15 stories downtown under certain scenarios.
Yeah. Okay. And then the other question I thought about as you were talking about affordability, I just, not that I think there's going to be a ton of these accessible accessory dwelling units. I just wonder what would be the unintended consequences of that in terms of, like, what if a bunch of middle income families built onto their existing property, but then that just raised their property values, and then we actually would have not an affordability development. We would have more properties that were worth more, that would make sort of price people out of the community. Not that I think that's like a huge risk. It's just something I was thinking about as you were talking about that.
No, that's a valid point. We've been poking around to try and see if other communities have what they've run into.
Yeah.
What we've found is a lot of places have adapted this kind of stuff, but not a lot of people have taken the plunge to build it.
Yeah.
It's in fact, we've had a couple of like zeros when
I'm sure.
when we made calls. So we're a little bit close to the front edge of this trend, which is nice to actually be on the front edge of a trend. But we're not. I don't have the answer to that. It's something we'll keep poking around and see what we can find.
All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Stein?
Kind of a general question on this topic. Is there like one differentiating feature that would, indicate, this single family home has an accessory dwelling unit versus, this is a 2-family home? Like, is there, what is, yeah.
So, a couple of different things come to mind. First and foremost, what we're recommending specifically is that the owner has to live in one of the 2 units. And so that gets back to, the old way that duplexes were, that you lived in one side and you rented the other side. The idea behind this, though, is that fundamentally it appears to be a single-family house, whereas generally a 2-family house looks like a 2-family house. And so that's really the big differentiation between the 2. The other thing I would add is that other communities have had far more success, a lot of West Coast communities, with detached accessory structures. So at that point, it's single family, as opposed to 2 together. But the goal is to make it so that it appears to be a single family house.
So does that, I guess, follow-up question there?
Yeah.
Would that automatically mean then that things like a stairway to the second level is something that is not going to be permitted, or is that kind of up for discussion?
So the idea would be that you wouldn't permit it on the outside, but certainly within the garage or in some other architectural way, you would make it work.
Okay.
But absolutely still up for discussion. That's just sort of where we're starting from.
Sure.
I will be really curious to read that, because I know it was part of some future planning of the commission before I joined.
Yes.
And each year staff asked, are you are you interested in trying to take this up and look at it? And we all sort of punted, I think, a little bit because it's complicated. And I think the zoning and the setback, and I do see that in the draft ordinance, you've proposed no short-term rentals, because I think in some communities, I was just in Washington DC, and a friend of mine who I was visiting is building one of these in her backyard, and her intent is to use it as an Airbnb. And it sounds like we would not be doing short-term things like that, but the ordinance, as you've written it, could allow for a longer-term rental situation. I can see that potentially changing the nature of some neighborhoods in ways that people may or may not appreciate, and particularly with the DC change, they also allowed a lot smaller setbacks for these type of units than they would normally, just because of the nature of them being placed. They're very close anyway, and so I think some really careful thought about where and how they're allowed. They wouldn't really work in many communities or many areas because the lots aren't big enough. So it's only certain types of structures that would allow these to be built. And I just want to make sure that I don't know how we notice it in a way that we get the kind of feedback that we would want, because I think generally people are sort of, until it happens to them, they don't really care. And then all of a sudden somebody's doing this in the backyard of the next door neighbors, and it's an issue. So how do we get enough community awareness of this that we can have people thinking about the pros and cons? And some of that may be the research that you're doing to talk to other communities that have already done this and kind of learn from their mistakes. I think Ann Arbor allows them, and I think.
They do.
And kind of what their experiences have been, I think would be really interesting to me. And I just was also wondering, if this gets changed, does this affect the master plan at all? Like, would this have an impact on how I don't know that it would be a zoning thing, but sort of what we're talking about in master plan, or sort of where we see things going in terms of growth in the township because of some of this being allowed?
So it certainly becomes an implementation piece of the master plan. I mean, fundamentally, you're touching on a lot of the goals and objectives. You're talking about affordability. You're talking about directing growth inside the urban service boundary. You're talking about allowing people to stay in their homes as they begin to age. Like, you're really hitting a lot of the bread and butter topics. So I think, personally, it's a positive towards that. But I think, to your point about some of the neighborhoods not being necessarily good options, I think what we're going to find, to be honest with you, is that a lot of deed restrictions are going to prohibit this from happening. I'm guessing, if I looked into a couple of neighborhoods, there's probably a fair number of bylaws and deed restrictions.
Through HOA type, no, that's a good point. Just a really quick logistical question. Looking at the draft, some of the text is in red and some of the text is in blue. Is that just different editors, or is that?
No, red is like changes just flat out that we made. The blue are the things that, especially with the ADUs, those are the things that we hope to get some feedback on and to understand how the planning commission wants to proceed with those.
And I would be curious, like, looking at the majority of properties in the township, if you went to section 12D, if the existing setbacks are required, would there be able to be any properties in the township that could have standalone structures versus build above the garage type structures?
Yeah, it's yes, but it's going to really depend on how your lot's laid out, right? If you already have an attached garage, you're unlikely to be able to get a detached garage because you're not going to be able to get around the house.
Yeah.
If you already have a detached garage, you can probably do both, because at that point, there's probably a scenario under which you could design it in such a way.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time to do this.
Absolutely.
I don't have any other questions. Does anyone else have questions?
Questions here?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, I do have one more question. You said when you were talking, public hearing on the 28th, but the write-up says public hearing on the 14th?
We audibled after the packet went out. I apologize.
Okay, that's okay. Thank you, just want to make sure.
We sat down this morning and started going through things, and we're like, yeah, we're just going to send that one off.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next is master plan update, item 10, draft master plan introduction.
So this is at the request of the Planning Commission to get you guys something you can start chewing on here. Again, not intending to talk about this in any great length tonight, given that we're missing part of the board. And so just to lay out the thought schedule here, because again, we're shooting for December adoption. Master plan, we have essentially set aside the 14th for master plan discussion. As much or as little as the board wants to talk about it at the 14th. On the 28th of August, what we're going to ask the Planning Commission to do is make a recommendation to the Township Board to distribute it. Now, there's some technical things that are going on here under state law, and that's why I'm going to walk through this real quick. The board has taken it upon themselves under the state enabling legislation. The board has decided that they will be the final arbiter and approver of the master plan. So they also then need to actually authorize it for distribution. And what that is under the state enabling legislation, we did this at the beginning of the plan, where the secretary sent a letter to all the surrounding communities, all the utilities, all the railroads, MDOT, and I'm probably missing a couple, but there's a laundry list that we have to send this to. Now that we're done, now that we're not at a draft point, we have to do the same thing again. We have to send notice to all of them, and there is a 63-day review period. So what we'll ask the board on September 5th is to distribute it. And on September 6th, we'll get it out. Because what you're gonna see is we've done this as an entirely digital plan this time to make it. My original dream was one giant page, and it was like a poster, and communications did a very good job of talking me off the ledge and explaining how technologically it's not going to work with what we have right now. And so my dream for 5 years is that, just so everyone is aware. But we'll be able to distribute it essentially instantly once the board says go. And then if we want to talk about it further in September and October, great. If we are comfortable after August, the draft is good, and we'll wait to see what feedback we get, great. Either way, we have 63 days where we can't take action. And so then on November 13th, just a reminder, the Planning Commission only meets once in November and December. On November 13th, we will hold the required public hearing for the master plan, and if there are no major concerns, at that point, we will ask the Planning Commission to take action to make a recommendation to the board at that point. If we get if something comes up or there's major feedback or something of that nature, staff will be asking the Planning Commission to consider a special meeting in November to after the public hearing to take action on whatever changes need to be made, because we do want to get this done by the end of the year. And then the Township Board will do the same thing in December as the Planning Commission. But they meet twice, so I have a little wiggle room there. But yeah, the 63-day review period kind of doesn't slow us down, but it certainly doesn't allow for the immediacy of the process. So I want to walk through this with you briefly. Just a reminder, this is an update to our existing plan. Our existing plan, still there, has a lot of good information in it. What we're trying to do here is capture what has changed in the last 5 years, and what has changed is we had a global pandemic, so a lot of things didn't change. A lot of things we anticipated happening didn't happen, and so this has been written in such a way to take that in mind. And all credit in the world to communications and Rachel Stolen and communications for, we call it zhuzhing it up.
A technical term?
A technical term, spelled with a Z if you need that for a crossword puzzle. But Senior Planner Shorkey did an excellent job of getting the text going. Communications did an excellent job making it pretty. I was the slowdown in between of putting it all together. So functionally, your name's up in lights on the left-hand side, but this is intended to follow the format that the communications department has sort of set as our brand standard. People know this program. People expect this is how it's going to go. So it flows as a magazine here. Executive summary, and then we get into the goals and objectives. And these are things, we've presented these to you previously, and we've tried to incorporate the feedback that we got from you previously. This is the meat and potatoes of the plan, or the goals and objectives, the 5 main goals and all the objectives underneath. Then we get to, there's sort of this list of specific recommendations that, these are items that like had a good thought or the public comments came in and it was like, okay, that's really specific. I don't want to lose that by trying to incorporate it with something else or blending it into something else. So these are kind of kept as the beginning of, functionally what is an implementation matrix. These are the things that we're going to really start looking into in short order because they're specific, right? Straight and to the point. Future land use plan is one of those technical requirements. We're going to make this a little prettier because there's a lot of white space, but functionally this is what each of those things on the future land use map mean. And you may be asking yourself, where is the map? Well, we're not trying to shrink down a 36 by 54 size map into an 8.5 by 11 plan. So what we've done is there'll be hyperlinks to each of the outside maps. So they get shown at their native resolution, and so people can zoom in on the areas they want. Those links are not live in the version you have. We are still working out that detail. That is the one detail that didn't make it into this draft yet. So anytime you see a red link, it's not live yet. We apologize. It will be live before your next meeting. So this goes through what are functionally the minor changes to the future land use map that the Planning Commission talked about previously. Faith Lutheran Church. The next phase of Copper Creek. The properties in Tower Garden area that are partially shown as park and partially residential, even though they're all residential. Schultz Veterinary Clinic, which we brought up as, hey, it's residential, but it's very clearly an office use, and if they go away, what do we do? So those changes are relatively minor because, again, a lot of stuff wanted to happen in the last 5 years, but didn't happen. The zoning plan is, this is the nexus between the future land use map, which is the long-term planning document, and the zoning ordinance, which is fundamentally the main implementation document for the master plan. So the zoning plan kind of links the two together. Has a couple of its own recommendations of things, and those recommendations are actually carry over from the previous plan. We only got to like one of them in my time, and they really hadn't got to any of them prior to my time because COVID kind of ground everything to a halt. The PICAs, this is something that I brought up to the Planning Commission previously. Rather than have the PICAs just have a couple of pages in the plan, what we're going to do is we're going to spin each of those areas off into their own subplan. And over the course of the next 4 to 5 years, they're each going to get their own document. It helps in a lot of ways, but it also gives those areas a chance to get us a little more in depth into those areas. And we're going to add the mall to the PICA. The Economic Development Corporation recommended that. DDA recommended that, and the Planning Commission previously had no concern with that. So again, the PICAs are downtown Okemos, downtown Hazlet, Carriage Hills, and then we're going to add the mall. So over the course of the next 5 years, we're going to, staff and the Planning Commission are going to work on plans for those areas. 3 of them, we really have a good starting point from the existing plan, so we just build on that and make it better. The mall is really going to be a start from scratch type discussion. Urban service boundary, again, will be linked out to the main map. The 2 maps you see here are just the 2 changes that we previously discussed with the Planning Commission. This is one of the this is the only new thing we added. The only new thing we added. This is the build-out analysis that we talked about previously. This is going to get bigger in the next version of the plan as we really dig into some of this. But this is that high-level analysis we did of, okay, in theory, with the vacant land that we have, what does that turn into if it all got built on, every little bit of it? So this is that theoretical build-out. Doesn't take into account wetlands, doesn't take into account size and shapes of parcels yet. That's for a future discussion. This is just a theoretical, most number of units possible, for lack of a better term. And then we start talking about the natural features. And we didn't want to recreate the wheel from the previous plan because, again, there's a lot of this discussion in the previous plan. But we wanted to acknowledge, our history of wetland protection, the Red Cedar River running through the community, the Lake Lansing, and the other natural features in the community. Transportation is one of the required elements of the plan. This is from the state enabling legislation, so we've touched base on transportation options. The other piece you have to talk, another one of the pieces you have to talk about is infrastructure. So this is a high-level overview of our infrastructure. Again, links out wherever we can. We will include water and sewer maps, which I forgot about, but we'll link those out as well to get people the information. This is not, one of the things I want to stress is this is not intended to supplant, like the pathway master plan, which is linked on this page. There's a lot of, we have other plans. We're not trying to recreate the wheel here. What we want to do is we want to help those plans come along and be part of the master plan. And so we're brief write-up on the parks plan and the climate sustainability plan, the DDA integrated plan. I passed the pathway master plan, I apologize, but they're incorporated within, and we're not trying to recreate the wheel here. And we should put Sam Deal, our communications director's face on the back cover for all her department's work on this. So that's really where we're at this point. Again, happy to answer whatever questions you guys might have at this point, but I wanted to get it to you so you have the opportunity, as you wanted, to start going through some texts and start really digging into this a little bit.
Any questions? Commissioner Curtis?
Yes. So my question is, you said you're going to get it out to, once it's all completed, get it out to citizens. In what avenue, what way are you going to do
So
that?
it's a
Email or?
It's going to be entirely digital. So what we'll do is we have a list of everybody that emailed us comments, so we can get back to them pretty much lickety split, and then we'll use the township social media and web presence to start getting this out and about.
Piggybacking on that question, I think that you reached out to neighborhood leads on your distribution list
Yes.
with the master plan before. Will you do that with looking for public? Does
Yeah.
that automatically happen?
We will try. Yeah, we're going to try and reach out to whoever we can.
Okay, great, thank you.
And I'm just going to assume you're going to post it on the website as well, so it can be accessible that way.
Yeah, technically it is accessible, but you got to have the super special link right now to get to it.
Okay.
Nowhere to go. Any other questions?
I have a comment.
Commissioner Scales?
I like this format. This is an easy to read, it's easy on the eyes, and it pulls you into the document. This is a very, very nice format. But there's always the but. What I heard from you specifically to us, basically a charge, is we have to be up to speed and be prepared for November to move this off the dime, or it's going to throw the whole calendar back, or it's going to throw our life calendar out of whack. That's the message that I got from you. Am I misinterpreting that?
I fundamentally, this is not my document, this is the community's document, and so if it takes longer than that, it takes longer than that. I think our point is simply that, this is an update to the existing plan, and so it's not nearly as detailed. Additionally, I don't know that anyone, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I don't know that anyone wants to go through it word by word and review this. But that's why we're getting it out now, to try and get the feedback and understand how people want to proceed forward.
My understanding of the master plan is what you just said. You have a master plan in place already. And every 5 years, you look and see what you need to adjust. So we're not writing a brand new master plan. And I hope you keep us focused on that.
I will do my best.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Thoughts, comments?
I have a question.
Commissioner Brooks?
Thank you. So I won't be here at the August 14th meeting. So how should I submit like a letter with my comments on this?
Absolutely. You could get it to us, and we can answer any questions you have. If you have comments, get them in and we'll incorporate them into our, we can incorporate them into our staff memo, just knowing that you're not going to be there.
Okay.
So that there can be a discussion about them. And then when we get back on the 20, when you're back, hopefully for the 28th meeting, we can circle back on some of those comments.
Yeah, no, I didn't, I mean, I'm not like, I just was thinking like I'd like to participate, but I just won't be,
Yeah,
I will be in the middle of Montana.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, so I won't be on Wi-Fi. But I did want to submit those so that they could be like part of, and I haven't done this before, but just like part of the formal conversation, sort of.
Yeah, absolutely. If you get them to us,
Okay.
and we can talk timing, we'll be able to incorporate them in some way into the packet.
Okay.
Not a problem.
All right. Okay, thanks.
And that goes to any commissioner and the ones that are not here that are probably going to watch this in a couple days. If you're not going to be here on the 14th for sort of that initial kickoff discussion, feel free to just get your comments to me. We're happy to work on that.
Commissioner Scales?
I think it would be important that we, as the planning commission, receive his comments that he's sending in. I mean, his actual comments, just as if we were conversing with him, even though he is not here, because his comments are valuable to the rest of us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'll either just be an email attachment or I'll cut and paste them into the memo.
Yeah.
One way or the other.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at too. So I wanted to submit them formally or whatever I need to do to.
Just get them to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
We won't edit them, we swear.
So, I mean, it seems like there's a very specific format.
Hit the spell check.
I was going to comment, if there's no other, I agree with Commissioner Scales. I like the look and feel. It flows nicely. It's easy to use. It's really friendly. And my only but, and I think this may be kind of a reflection of me being a little bit old school, my only concern with so many links to online documents within it is, there's a responsibility for all of us that I want to, in addition to being familiar with this, we should be familiar with those linked documents because they are in essence part of the plan. So reminder to everybody as you're reviewing to do that. But also, is there some place that for posterity, there is a point in time document of what that map looked like at the time that this was published? Because I could see, online content is so changeable. And while this is a published document that I think you could change, but it'd be less likely to, every time you link to another page that's not a static page, but that has the ability to be changed and amended, that if you look at it a year from now or 5 years from now as a future planning commissioner and you're trying to get back to where we were when the planning commission at this time or the township board at this time approved it, I'd like them to be able to see where we were, or for new planning commissioners coming on. Sometimes that history is helpful, and I just want to make sure that somehow there's an archive of that for folks who are making decisions in the future to go back and look to it. And I don't know necessarily the best format for that, if it's the Wayback Machine on a web page, or I'm not sure what, but to me that seems important, and it might be the only one, but.
No, it's an interesting point, but I think what I would say, and yes, absolutely we can do it.
Okay.
That's not the problem. I would say though that the future land use map to be updated requires this process.
Okay.
The PICA boundaries to be updated requires this process. So the sort of big three of this plan, the future land use map, the build out, or the future land use map, the urban service boundary, and the PICAs are like set with this plan. Your point is well taken though, once you get to like the pathway master plan, that's on an opposite schedule of us. That'll be updated again in, I think, 3 years. And so what we'll need to do is make sure that we have dates, update notes on those plans of this is what was changed, or here's the link to the previous version kind of thing. Yes.
And I think, truly, it's much more customer friendly to not have a document that's here that goes back to things that are no longer relevant if those things are updated. So I like the idea of it being live, but I also, as somebody who knows the importance of records retention and history, and don't repeat history if you made decisions once and you want to know why, that preserving that is also important. And so finding that balance of both, and I just appreciate thoughts on that. But
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk to communications a little bit more about how we present it on the web too.
Sounds great, thank you. I don't have any other questions or comments. Anyone else have anything? Okay, excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Let me see your agenda because I can't remember. I got a different page. Thank you. So I guess that takes us to reports and announcements. Township board updates.
The main update that I would provide to the planning commission is the township board did ultimately adopt the recreational marijuana zoning and licensing ordinances. And we are now bringing forward the special use permits for the 3 medical licensees to finish that process. And then the board is expected to begin discussing criteria for review of the recreational licenses. So that ball is still moving, but sort of phase 1 is complete.
Any questions for Director Schmidt? Okay. And liaison reports, 11B. Any liaison reports? Commissioner Scales.
There was not a quorum at the EDC. And this has been an ongoing dilemma. It seems like they're,
Yeah, the CIA has a meeting this week, which I'll hopefully update everyone on when I come back from vacation. But it's an important one because we're reviewing the TIF, the tax
Increment.
financing plan that Amber has been reviewing. So there'll be a rather large update on that afterwards, which will probably have some discussion points for the master plan, I would guess. So that would be my preliminary update.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I have a long packet I have to read prior to that meeting.
Have fun. You need a vacation after that, I guess.
I will.
Anybody else have anything?
Yeah, the Transportation Commission met on Thursday, but we did not have a quorum. We did talk about, so basically we just talked about some of the pathways, some of the updates on the pathways, the different trails, throughout the township, and had a discussion about marking some of the bike lanes and how that can happen. And but basically that's pretty much all we did.
Thank you, Commissioner
Official
McCurdy.
meeting.
I'm excited for the bike path to finish.
Me too. I keep driving past it. It's like right by my house.
Like, come on, finish up.
Yeah.
And if there's nothing else, I guess that takes us to item 12, project updates. Project report, I saw there was a printed project report.
Yep, we're just gonna make sure we try to get this to you regularly. The one thing I'll tell you is the elevation phase 3 is slowly but surely getting close to being done. And I really hope to have an update for everyone on everyone's favorite specialty grocer at the next meeting.
We'll be anxiously awaiting that update. Any question?
He who shall not be named.
I should have details.
Awesome. Thank you. I hope it's good news.
I'm trying.
Anybody else have any questions on the project updates? Okay, I guess we're at 13, public remarks. I still see no public, so I think we can go to item 14, commissioner comments. Any comments that you haven't already shared? Okay.
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Commissioner Brooks.
Yeah. So this is potentially for Commissioner McCurtis and the Transportation Committee, but my car bottomed out going into the Meyer parking lot where the Chipotle entrance is. So it's there's a
yeah.
right on the north side of House to Home where they used to be. There is a huge hole right in the middle of that, right where you go off of Okemos into the parking lot.
on the west side.
Yeah.
We'll take a look at it. It sounds like it's
Yeah.
on the not in the right.
I think it's
not in
on the
street.
property. I think it's on the
Okay.
property, so I'm not sure exactly though.
We'll take it up we can take it up as a site plan related issue.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. It could be-
Okay, but it was like, it shocked me and I think it would have broke my tire if I would have
Okay.
had good tires, so.
Yeah, we'll take a look at it tomorrow. I see Brian scribbling notes for me.
Thank you.
We'll take a look at it tomorrow, follow up with the property owner.
Okay, thanks. I don't know if that's like an appropriate comment for this body, but
Oh, absolutely. I tell everyone with respect to code enforcement and stuff like that, we don't see everything.
yeah.
I mean, I've got someone in the field, 6 hours a day, and we don't see everything. So like, please, I never go to that entrance when I
Yeah.
go to Meyer.
neither.
Every other entrance on that property, I probably drive twice a week.
Yeah.
That one, I never go in that one. So
Yeah.
that is helpful feedback.
Okay, cool. All right, good. All right, I'm done.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Thank you for the job that you all do.
Commissioner